I've always loved photography. It's been a lifelong passion of mine. When I was younger, I would run around with a camera my father gave me, snapping pictures of everything there was to see around our home in Nebraska. I had such a passion for it, in fact, that I set out to do it for a career. I started out doing some pretty boring work, taking pictures of food, some kids' baseball game, and once, a brief job taking pictures of raccoons. But then I caught a break that I never could have expected. I was offered a job taking pictures for a zoological expedition in the Amazon rainforest. I was stunned. I had never done anything remotely like this before, and I had never been that far away from home. The farthest away I'd been was Arizona. This was the job I had been waiting for, to propel me off to bigger and better things. I signed up almost immediately. I travelled to the University of Nebraska. It was there that I met Dr. Jules Armod, the man responsible for putting this expedition together. We were joined by his two assistants, Kate Hollows and Lewis Ford. We then took an airplane to Rio de Janeiro and then took a bus deep into the heart of Brazil to a small village called Haraptas. It was a very tiny community nestled between the tall, jungle-infested mountains, and it was not far away from the Amazon River. Dark and dense jungle surrounded us on all sides. I was absolutely blown away by its beauty. I got to work immediately taking pictures. In Haraptas, Dr. Ahmed met with a man named Uruk. Uruk was quite familiar with this region and would act as our tour guide through the area. Ahmed booked us a room at a local hotel and we just hung out for the night. Ahmed just wrote in his journal, so I spent my time talking with Uruk. Uruk, as it turned out, was quite a fascinating individual. He had lived in this area his whole life and told me stories of encounters with the wildlife and the Brazilian police and all sorts of crazy adventures. But then, in one conversation about the types of trees in the jungle, he kind of offhandedly mentioned a group of kids who had gone missing about 2 months ago. Missing? I said. How did they go missing? He thought for a moment, as though he was debating whether or not to elaborate further. Well, I mean, the rainforest can be a dangerous place if you don't know what you're doing. They were about 16 years old. They probably went out there, got drunk, got lost, and then who the hell knows after that. They were some good kids though. The village, of course, has gone wild with this thing though, said Uruk. What do you mean gone wild? I asked. They think some spirit got a hold of the boys. Some local legend. I wouldn't worry about it though. I've been in these jungles so often that I would have seen a spirit if there was one, said Uruk. I left the story at that, but I must admit, I had a strange uneasiness for the rest of the night. That morning, we set out into the jungle. We wore loose clothing and large backpacks carrying our supplies. We expected to be out there for 5 days, so we packed accordingly. Uruk led us through the jungle and soon the canopy began to blot out a lot of the light from the sky. The light that did filter through was transformed into a dark green. The jungle floor was covered in vegetation and little animals and birds hopped around as we passed. Uruk had warned us to watch out for any brightly coloured reptiles, since they were almost certainly venomous. Dr. Ahmed directed me to take pictures of various plants and animals as we passed. The unique lighting of the jungle allowed for some truly impressive images. His two assistants took pages of notes and observations about the different life forms they encountered. We walked for several hours. Occasionally, we would take breaks. I was covered in sweat, as well as mosquito bites. Despite the discomfort, that day was honestly a beautiful experience. Then, Kate called the rest of us over to check something out. We all obliged and walked over in the direction of her voice. And it was there that we found it. It was a large, circular stone, about a foot in length and an inch in thickness. It was a jet black, and it was covered in a variety of strange carvings. The engravings depicted an image of a being that had no real defining features, save for two large, red eyes. The rest of its body was pure black. The being was hovering above a crowd of people who were shown cowering and crying before the entity in fear and terror. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" I asked Yurik. He shook his head. "It doesn't look like anything a local tribe would try to create. Most of their images depict beings that are half animal." Dr. Ahmed stared at the stone. His eyes portrayed a mind that was deep in thought. Eventually, he turned to the rest of us. "I don't think it's anything to worry about, but I think we should bring it with us to give to the archaeology department when we head back to the States. They will certainly find it interesting," said Ahmed. Kate and Lewis both agreed, and since I had the least amount of supplies in my bag, I was given the stone to carry. The rest of the day passed without any strange oddities, besides some of the wildlife we were studying. That night, we found a large rock wall and we camped out beside it. There was a small clearing next to it that allowed us to light a fire. We had brought only ready-made meals, but they were still quite good. We fell asleep later that night after our conversations over food. I fell deep into the darkness of unconsciousness until I woke up. I looked around and noticed that it was still quite dark out. Due to the fact that we were in a clearing, the moon cast a pale light on only this section of the jungle, ending at the tree line. I checked my watch and I saw it was 3:34 a.m. I closed my eyes again in a vain attempt to fall back asleep. After realizing that this was futile, I stood back up and I stared off into the trees. Then, I noticed something. My backpack. It was giving off a faint orange glow from within it. I found this quite strange. I walked over to it and cautiously unzipped it. The light was coming from that stone. It was radiating an orange light. I went to pull it out. The moment my hand touched it, a burning sensation filled my hand. I screamed in pain and I reared back from it. Somehow I didn't wake anyone up. I looked back at that stone and I saw that the light was slowly fading from it. Eventually, it fell back into its usual jet black color. I was absolutely stunned and confused. I didn't understand how that could possibly happen. After about an hour of tossing and turning in my sleeping bag, I fell asleep. The next day, we continued our journey. I still had the object in my bag, despite serious misgivings about it. I continued taking pictures at the request of Ahmed. The next day passed quite similarly to yesterday, but this time, something was slightly different. We had a much harder time finding animals to take any pictures or observations of. We still found them, but even the ones we did, they soon scampered off immediately upon us passing them. It was sometime in the afternoon. I was taking pictures of a snake that was slithering upon the ground. Lewis was right behind me, explaining some of his observations. Then, just for fun, I snapped a picture of the jungle. I then took a glance at the photo. There was something else in the picture. It was a boy, probably around 16, crawling on the ground and covered in blood. He had massive lesions, rips and holes all over his body. I could see his muscles and bones in some places. He was looking directly at the camera, with his hands digging into the ground, and he looked terrified. I jumped in my skin when I saw the photo, and then stared at it with mounting disbelief. I then showed it to Lewis, who looked just as stunned as I. We went back and showed it to the others. Kate was quite unnerved by the picture, and Ahmed certainly glanced at it in a disinterested way. But then Yurik identified him. "That was one of the boys who vanished out here 2 months ago," said Yurik. Now, I was truly unnerved by this point, and I wanted nothing more than to head back to the village. I told Ahmed that this wasn't normal, and that I had inspected the camera, and there was nothing wrong with it. But he refused. "Look, this is quite strange, no doubt, but it's not enough of a reason to cancel our whole expedition. We're doing great work, and I refuse to have it destroyed because you saw something weird in a photograph. Now, we are continuing the journey. Come along now," said Ahmed in frustration. Everyone reluctantly agreed, but I was seriously nervous, as was Yurik. We walked through the jungle for the rest of the day and into the night, where we camped out in a slightly less dense region of the rainforest. I sat against a tree, now bathed in almost complete darkness, inspecting my camera for anything I may have missed. I was still unable to find anything wrong with it. I then asked Lewis to hand me some water from the container. I got no response. So then I asked again. Still nothing. I got up and I realized Lewis was nowhere to be found. I yelled for the rest of the group, and Kate, Yurik, and Ahmed ran towards me. We looked around, but we could find no trace of Lewis. We then decided to search the area around our camp. We all split up, and we called out to Lewis as we marched through the jungle. Then I found him, and then I screamed. Lewis was almost entirely unrecognizable. He was slumped against a tall tree, and his face had been completely caved in to the point that I could see his brains. His clothing had been ripped to shreds, and I could see muscles and organs beneath the skin that barely clung to his body. There was blood all over, and a foul stench that reminded me of my uncle's butcher shop hung over the air. The other three ran towards me when they heard my scream. They all had similar reactions. Kate knelt down next to Lewis and started sobbing uncontrollably. Ahmed simply hung his head down. Uruk started looking around in all directions with a look of fear. That's it. We're done here. I'm going back to the village. I don't know what the hell is going on, but I don't intend to find out, said Uruk. Ahmed turned to him. Fine, you can head back, but I intend to stay. Are you out of your mind? You're going to die out here, said Uruk. You don't know that, said Ahmed. Whatever. Do what you want. I'm heading back. Good luck getting home without a guide, said Uruk. He marched back to camp to grab his supplies. Kate seemed to be deep in thought, trying to decide what to do. I, for one, had decided the moment that I saw the body that I was getting the hell out of there. I took out my camera and I decided to take a picture of Lewis's body for the authorities to possibly analyze. I snapped the picture and I loaded the photo. And there it was in the background. It was very tall. It rose several feet above our heads. It had dark, shadowy features, but appeared humanoid. Then there were its eyes. They were a bright, fiery red. They blazed even in this still image. I then took another picture, and it was closer. Then another, and it was closer, and then another, and then another. I immediately ran in the opposite direction, telling the others to run too. They were confused, but they went along with it, following me through the trees, leaving all of the supplies in camp. We ran for quite a while, but it was difficult to run through the dense foliage. I was covered in cuts and bruises, and I was dripping in sweat. The other three were not far behind me. I started snapping pictures all around me, and thankfully, I did not see anything out of the ordinary in the pictures. Once I felt that we were clear, I told the group to stop running. I then turned around and started snapping more pictures. I didn't see anything in the photos, so I breathed a sigh of relief. We should keep walking that way. We can't stop. It may still be coming, I said. I then showed them the picture of the entity, and they were all speechless. We then decided to just keep walking through the night, despite the danger of getting lost. I remained in the back, taking pictures constantly to see if it was approaching. This way. I think I know of a village nearby from the last time I was here, said Dr. Ahmed. I can promise you there is no village anywhere near here. You must be thinking of a different spot, said Uruk. Shut the hell up, you freak. I know where the hell I am, and don't tell me otherwise, yelled Ahmed. Now Uruk was pissed. He punched Ahmed right in his nose, and Kate screamed. You're the one who got us into this mess. How the hell would you know more about this area than a man who's been out here his entire life, said Uruk. Because this isn't my first time out here, but I can guarantee you that I know far more about that entity than you would, said Ahmed. We all just stared at him in shock. I already knew that thing was out here, but I knew no one would believe me if I said I wanted to mount an expedition to find it. So, I made up some bullshit story to go on a zoological expedition. I'm here for something far more valuable, and you three can be a part of it. I could barely contain my rage by this point. He had brought us all out into this place to chase some demonic entity and didn't even tell us about the danger. Well, you've got your damn proof now. I have it on camera, I said. The image will fade over time. I'm trying to find something more solid. There used to be a people out here who built a shrine in its honor. I intend to find it. I realized that it had been a while since I'd last taken a picture, so I took a picture of Kate. It was right behind her. We watched in horror as her skin started to fall off her body and her chest began to cave in. Blood shot everywhere. She screamed in fear and agony for far too long. We realized that there was nothing we could do. "Follow me," yelled Yurik. I followed him through the jungle, but Ahmed didn't come. We raced through the bushes and ferns and jungle trees, and I was cut up pretty badly. I heard a loud noise come from behind us. It sounded like someone was exhaling loudly. A deep, dark sound. It seemed to race through the leaves, causing the branches to sway back and forth. Then I tripped on a stump. I fell down hard, and my foot twisted at an angle that it shouldn't be able to twist at. I yelled in pain. Yurik came back to help me up. He managed to get me to my feet before it got him. Yurik's face twisted into terror. Blood began to pour from his nose, mouth, and eyes. His entire torso was eviscerated, and he cried out in pain. I'd like to say that I tried to help him like he helped me, but I just ran. Despite the pain in my foot and Yurik's cries for help, I just ran. I managed to eventually make it to a road. I then flagged down a car and requested a ride. They obliged and drove me to the nearest village. Just like Ahmed had said, the creature had vanished from all of my pictures. To this day, the events that transpired in that jungle continue to haunt me. I lay awake at night, thinking of Yurik, how I was a coward at a time when he needed me, when I knew that he would have done the same for me. I also wonder what became of Dr. Ahmed, if he ever did find that shrine he was talking about, or if he was killed like the rest of them. But the thing that truly haunts me at night are those eyes. Those deep, red, fiery eyes.